one more thing that's little, I wrote this down too, and it's regular, that I wish I would have figured out a lot earlier is inefficient processes amplify exponentially with scale. And I wish I would have known that in the beginning, because you have all these great ideas. You listen to all these podcasts. You look at all these other people's systems and things they're doing, and you want to be like them, or you want to do it like them, and then you may just create. It may seem like the simplest thing in the world to you at the time, but as you scale, everything exponentially gets more complicated, and simple is easy.
We'll do a quick intro here, Trey. Get our energy going. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today, we have Trey Miller back on the pod. Before, Trey, remember when we used to have to keep you anonymous because of fear for your boss finding out back in the day of you being an associate? Remember those days? You were the mystery guest. Now we've uncovered your identity, and this is you've been on the pod, I think, more times than anybody, maybe. The reason being, let me give some context to people who may have not been found. Maybe this is their first time hearing about Bulletproof or listening. But Trey is based out in North Carolina, and I've known him for a long time. I think the first time I met you, you were with your wife, Hannah, and it was out in California for, I think, like the second summit. I think that was one of the first times we really connected. Is that about accurate? Yeah. So it's been a long journey. You've been a masterminder for 3 years now, right?
Right.
Been the mastermind for 3 years, and you actually joined using some of your, you took a leap of faith, and you took it, in the philosophy of, I really need this help as I'm growing in my next journey, which you left an associateship and wanted to go into ownership. And I believe you took some of your leasehold improvement money and applied it towards mastermind. Is that an accurate, is that an urban myth, or is that true?
No, that's true. It was get a CBCT or join the mastermind. So I went 2D, and
so smart. So smart. You went 2D and Bulletproof versus 3D.
That's right. It was smart move. I do it again in a heartbeat. So
I have to say, Trey, that it's been really a pleasure of my career getting to know you and help you, and kind of, feel like I've played a part in just your journey. You've put in the hard work. I always tell people, like, you just don't get miraculous results like Trey has gotten without digging in and doing the shit, right? Eating the glass. And then, it's part of it. So, but it's been quite a joy to kind of just watch you and play a small part in some of this.
Well, I appreciate you, you and Craig, you guys have been, instrumental in the growth, to show, it's the glass ceiling, and you don't know what's there.
Until you pop through.
Until you pop through, right? Or until someone else does it, the 4-minute mile. And so, you guys kind of put it out there and threw out the gauntlet, and I was just willing to go there. But again, the mastermind, both you, Craig, even Dwight, now no Trey Tippett. These, you guys have been, I couldn't have done it without you guys.
Well, I disagree with that. I think you could have. I think you would have gotten there, right? It may be on a slower trajectory. Right. Our job was to kind of tap you between the lines and say, go do this, don't do this kind of thing. And when you're sailing out into a blue ocean, it's scary. And so it's fun to have, it's not fun. It's important to have good mentors that can guide you and say, no, land is over there, not over there. That's the abyss of the ocean.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be as happy though. You know? Yeah, like I think there's a fulfillment that you gain from it all. And I may still have come, lagging behind, but I don't think I would be as happy as I am right now.
So I'm glad you're touching on this, because this is an important thing. As we're going over, we actually just we're in the month right now of our mastermind of talking about KPIs and what's important and how to move the needle and bonus systems and all these things, right? And Craig and I always contend that there's really like one master KPI, right? All these KPIs that you're doing, and look at reappointment rate and EBITDA and all these things. Ultimately, they should flow up to you, the happiness, your fulfillment as the owner or as a dentist, just period. The ultimate KPI is, are you happy? Are you fulfilled with what you're doing? And if you're not, like, then all the other shit that got you here, all the other shit, like, looking at hygiene reappoint doesn't really matter, in my opinion. So, and I'm not saying you have to have like this inner peace and this kumbaya, and you shouldn't look at metrics unless you have kumbaya, like happiness. But I think that doing one without the other, or doing one without the optics of the other is hard. It's not fulfilling. Like you were kind of saying, like you wouldn't have been as fulfilled.
Yeah, I mean, you and I had, many conversations. You just said, just hang in there, or, or you're pulling back the spring to release the spring. And so, just to kind of get through a certain wave of where you are, and it takes some hard work, some trying times sometimes to get to, a place what makes you individually happy. What makes me happy is not going to be happy for everybody. And I think it's important to as we kind of talk through the rest of this podcast, to know that, like, just what I did's not for everybody, because you could get here and you'd be absolutely miserable.
How you started your career, because someone may have not, this, like I said, this may be someone's first Bulletproof, or someone have heard about your journey. So give a quick summation, Trey, on how you kind of started your journey in dentistry and where you are now.
So I practiced in private practice for 3 years. Was with a pretty well-established private practice. My third year, I was collecting over $900,000 as an associate, not including hygiene. So if you add hygiene, be over $1 million. Decided that was not the right fit for me, and that I wanted to leave it all for glory, and do a startup. So in May of 2020, I opened a startup, and that's kind of where the journey began. I joined the Bulletproof Mastermind before I opened. COVID hit, and kind of threw everything upside down, which, long story, was probably one of the best things that ever happened to us. And year to date, from May 5th to May 5th, we collected 1.3. In
This
2020,
post COVID, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
So in
during.
2021, you went from May of 2021 to May of 2022.
Correct.
You hit
We did 1.3.
1.3. Got it.
And then in 2022, we did 2.2. And then with 2020, well, I'm sorry, 20, the first calendar year. So I guess that would have been
22. Yeah.
or wait, let me back up. So May of 2020 to May of 2021, we did 1.3. And then in calendar year 2021, we did 2.2. And then in 2022, which was last year, which we just finished up, we did 2.7. 2.7.
Okay. Yeah. So year over year, you're giving a kind of your window after COVID, your window of that year of COVID, and then your window the next following year. So the full calendar year. So that is quite the meteoric growth, really, essentially coming out of COVID and then going from zero, which is, let's call it May, to now as being an enterprise value or top line revenue of your practice of being 2.7, you said, right? Right. So that's quite the transition. What I'd like to know from that, and I think what people can know, because I think we've gone over some of your journey, right? We've had you on before when we only had the time of that first year. Now we have kind of the second year of 2022. So what did you learn since last we spoke? Like, what hurdles did you encounter from going from 1.3, because it's a different skill set that's needed to go from 1.3 to 2.7?
Yeah, that's a great question, and don't let me gloss over and probe where you want, Pete. You know, Part of it's personnel, and I guess even from beginning to now, I've always been constantly looking at what kind of hurdles do I have, what are in front of me, what are gonna be in front of me, trying to stay 5 steps ahead always.
Mhm.
Um, and anticipating where are your roadblocks going to be, who's your bottlenecks, how do we avoid those, and that's something I kind of personally just obsess about. And then sometimes things hit you and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
From a personnel standpoint, you're right. I mean, it takes a much different office and team to run a $1 million practice versus a $2 million practice versus a 2.5 plus. You need a whole different support team. You need
So you're
training.
saying a hurdle, Trey, just to cut you off, the hurdle has been knowing how to manage your team?
I think the hurdle is being able to flex within all those different
Mhm.
range of life cycle, and understanding that what worked in day one doesn't work today,
Right.
and being able to get yourself out of that. Because give me an example, like what kind of, I'll briefly run over, like from the beginning, like day one, you're focused on just putting people on the schedule. You're talking about daily team training on how to answer phone calls, whether we have enough supplies to do the root canal that's here, because you're running thin on supplies on everything. You're paying attention to collections and Google reviews. I mean, that's like the day one, first three to 6 months. And then you can get to where you're doing 50, 60 a month. And then it's like, okay, we started with a front desk, a high assistant, and now it's like, all right, now we need to add, another assistant, a hygienist, and then that gets you to another hurdle. So we can kind of fast forward to, like, $1-2 million practice to a 2 plus. So I mean, for me, like a $1 to $2 million practice, I mean, you're going to two doctors, yourself and another doctor. You're going to have at least three front desk, four assistants, 3 to 4 hygienists, and then possibly think about adding like some type of management, in my opinion, like a clinical manager or an operations manager. I mean, and that to me was kind of where, once I started adding in those management level people, is where I started seeing, some of the workload cut off myself, and then it's from a administrative standpoint, and then two, where we were able to then make another jump.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let me unpack some of this. Management. What does that mean?
So I before I needed it, I hired an operations manager. Now that
At what
didn't
level, Trey?
I hired when I was around $1 million.
$1 million. Okay. So you hired what was the title? Not that we're going to focus on titles, but
And off a operations manager. So
operation manager. And that's different. Do you have a practice? Did you have a practice I'm sorry, did you have an office manager at that point?
yes,
So
yeah,
it's not it's in addition to, correct?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
The whole point. She had previously managed 5 practices. It
Okay.
didn't bad decision.
So this brings up a good point, or something to you were crystal clear even before you had $0 coming in from being your own practice. You were crystal clear on the path, right? You had gone through the exercises of like your vision and what you wanted and what would fulfill you. And your vision was not, I want to have one practice. You have always wanted to go from a multi-location discipline, right? You wanted to go in multi-location. You wanted to become more of the CEO of your ecosystem. So where I'm going with this is, Trey, is that someone listening may say, oh, cool, I'm at $1 million. Maybe I need that same thing. Maybe I need that same hire. And I would challenge you, someone listening, just saying, be clear on where you want to go. Because Trey, you made the action to say, I'm going to hire not for the practice that I have currently. I'm going to hire for the practices that I want in the future. Right. So you made an expensive move, quote unquote expenses, right? Because our salaries and our payroll are usually our biggest expense in our line item. You made that move to say, I'm gonna take the investment from the expense and actually plan for offices 2, 3, 4, whatever it may be, and also to be growing for revenue and optimizing the current practice that I have, which sounds like you've already done, whether that was an expansion, right? Am I tracking on that so far? Is that kind of seem
100%. Yeah, I mean, it was a tough hire. I mean, it was 80. I paid her $82,000 a year, and
Right.
done for a non-clinical, non-producing, really even a non-day to day, basically an oversight and systems developing, front desk protocol creation individual to then help us grow and scale. Was this the sole reason for hiring her, so that when we did practice number 2, that we just plug and play from
Okay.
day.
So you've been spending a lot of time building the flagship, right? We
Yeah,
always call it kind of the flagship office, getting things buttoned up, your systems, your operations, your protocols, right? The SOPs of your practice buttoned up so that you are ready for scale. So many of us, myself included, just jumped in office number 2 because we could, right? Because the revenues at number 1 were good enough to compensate for sloppy operational systems, right? And I'm going back in my own career back to 2009. I kind of did this, which I think in hindsight, if I could have changed one thing about my trajectory, it would have probably been spend more time on number 1, because it would have saved me a lot of ass kicking. Spend more time on really bulletproofing the systems, the operations, and the protocols for number 2. So I hope that you learned kind of from, and I know I kind of been pressing on you to kind of really do all this stuff. Maybe not me, but Craig or Bulletproof, because it's crystal clear on what you wanted to do. And even
yeah,
if you're not, Trey, let me say one last thing and then I'll shut up. Even if you're not, let's just say you think you want to start out with being the multiple location, right? Like, let's say you hypothetically have been like, this is what I want. Like so many people, I want 5 locations, right? And then you go through the school of Craig and he kind of breaks down and he's like, well, that's not really what you wanted, is it? And you're like, nope, I just really wanted one that operated well. Hypothetically, if you had come to that realization that you only wanted one, how much better would your fulfillment and your happiness be if you had done this anyway, right? If you had built for many, but stayed at one.
yeah,
That makes sense? Yeah.
yeah, it'd be great. And I'd have no problem if I get to a point that I'm not happy and fulfilled and I'm miserable. I can always go back and go backwards, which I know I won't, but I always could, and it's going to be, a well-oiled machine. It's going to be functioning properly. I can walk in the door, do the dentistry, and go home at the end of the day. Numbers look great, collections look great. That's
I remember you called me once in your journey, and I'll never forget it. You said, I can't do this anymore. I am teetering on burnout. I can't do this. And I think it's so common to hear this. And how many times did I say that same thing to my own self? And I think that you did something very important, is that you were aware of the way you were feeling. And then you enlisted the help of someone who said, like, is this a normal? Should I be feeling this? And I was like, Trey, this is part of it. Like, it's just one more step, one more step, one more step, a couple more months, right? Which breaks you to that other point. And now you were like, I have no freedom. I have no free time. I have no this. I have no, it was like, I'm burnout, right? Contrast to where you are now, right? You're able to think about your business. You're able to go on fishing trips. You're able to do things with your family because you put in the hard work and the sacrifices in the beginning. Where I always say this, most entrepreneurs or most business people get to that point where they think, I can't do it. And then they stop, right? They're mere mortals. They stop and they say, well, that was just too hard, which is why the spoils go to people who, like I always say, put in the work, put in the hard work. You identified your weaknesses. Hey, I'm not a very good marketer. I have a shitty marketing company. I'm going to go learn marketing. Hey, I'm not a very good, business owner. I'm not very good leader organically. I'm going to learn some leadership stuff. So not only were you doing the operations of the practice, you were actually side hustling and learning skills. Like I said, the marketing and the leadership and things like that. You were side hustling and learning skills that were going to take you from A to B.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Took down some notes for before the call, and one thing I wish I would have done even sooner. And you helped me realize. Well, first thing you said was, "Be careful what you ask for."
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for, right?
That's how the conversation started. But I wish I would have been able to analyze and pivot faster. to analyze from a non-emotional,
Mm,
from a numbers perspective, as like a third party looking at your practice, analyze
mhm,
on and be able to pivot, because every step of the way, every hurdle, every plateau of your numbers, there's something that's going to get you over that next hump, and you just have to make those pivots, and you're the one that holds the keys. And it was kind of a pivotal moment for me to realize. One day I realized, I don't remember what or when, it was probably on one of our calls, is that like I make the rules. you
mhm.
know this is my practice. If I'm miserable, then I get to make the rules to be able to change that. Because otherwise, we got very busy very fast, and I was just running myself into the ground. I mean, granted, we were doing 100 plus a month, and the very profitable, making money, but I was so busy I couldn't get myself out of the weeds. And then finally, when I had that realization, it was like a light bulb went off, and I realized, like, all right, we got to start making some changes. And that was the journey of becoming fulfilled and becoming happy, and understanding, like, that, this is the way it's supposed to be.
I love how it's like that extreme accountability you took, right? So many of us, including myself in this, we play sometimes this victim, this woe is me, and oh, I can't do this because of the economy. Oh, I can't do this because I'm just an associate. Oh, I can't do this, right? And we play this narrative in our head, and before long, it's the self-fulfilling prophecy. And so you're right. Sometimes you have to get in and recognize that you are the creator of what happens next, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, and again, I'm gonna say this again. Every step of the way is a different hurdle, and a different kind of hurdle, and a different kind of challenge, and you have to be able to see it. And if you don't see it, you're going to be stuck where you are forever. You're just going to be stuck in a clinical setting. If that's, as we're going to be fine. But if you're not, then you got to find your way out of it. And I mean, go
But
ahead.
hurdles, like it's funny. We always talk about this, and I have hurdles. Craig has hurdles. People who are 10x the size of us have hurdles. You've had hurdles. So happiness and fulfillment is not the absence of it. It's just kind of qualifying and get a better quality hurdles where you're gamifying it, where you're saying, like, God, the hurdles I had 2 years ago were shitty, right? These are a little bit better. At least they're challenging, and I can do something about them. And I think we always say that people think that happiness is sitting on the beach with the Corona with the absence of hurdles. And it's actually quite the opposite, right? Humans want to solve shit. We want to solve problems. We want to fix things. We want to ideate. We want to use our brain. We want to get out of bed in the morning, eager to go do that. Right. And when you don't have that, I think that's where there's a lack of fulfillment. Going back, I know this wasn't supposed to be a fulfillment pod, but we brought it up a couple times because I think how old are you, Trey?
37.
Yeah. So figuring this shit out, like you've kind of been doing at age 37, where most people don't figure out this out until they're 65 or 60s or late 50s, whatever it may be. Like it's such a massive advantage that, you're playing in a different game. I'm just proud of you because it's like, you ate the glass, and you came on the other side and you spit it out and you're like, here's the bottle.
I think it's funny, too. Neither one of us are very touchy feely kind of guys at all. And here we are talking about this. Well, I wrote some things down. I think this could be helpful for people. This would be something I would
Wait,
have
did
loved.
this get too touchy feely with
Oh,
it? That this would be a first for me. If I took us in a direction of being too touchy feely, that would be officially the first podcast without Craig being here. That would say.
the hard right here.
All right, you wrote down some things. What?
Yeah, I thought this
Teach
was
and
great.
preach.
Yeah. So for me, I'll just say from my perspective, um, like, I hit a hurdle at about the $1 million mark, and I hear a lot of hurdles at $1 million marks. And for me, the couple things I wrote down, 5 things that helped me get over that hurdle. One, I could plow through, and do a lot of different dentistry to be able to kind of compensate for lack of areas in other sections of the practice. So one, we started focusing on retaining hygiene patients. So that's focusing on hygiene reappointment rate. That was number one.
Okay.
to making sure that we have the accounts receivable is under control, and good collection processes. Three, I think, was the absolute biggest was scheduling, and I think
Say scheduling.
scheduling.
Okay.
Yes, I mean,
What specifically?
so I'm to the point now where if I sit in the chair, I want to be doing $10,000 a day in production.
Okay.
Like I don't, it's not worth my time, and I hate to kind of say it that way. I mean, I'll definitely do it, but like that's my goal is $10,000 a day in
So
production.
an 8-hour day. So essentially a $1,200 an hour is what you're kind of looking for, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah,
1250, let's call it.
right.
Okay. Fair.
So so we block schedule now to production. And when we hit that production, unless it's like a $12,000 impression for like but for the most part, if it's once we hit that mark, we move on to the next day, so we don't have these high
Mhm.
$20,000 days, $5,000 days, and so that was a huge one as well. Um, looking at like a little bit more detailed numbers like production per patient, and then diving into some of the other individuals like perio percentages,
Mhm.
um, like just the little things, not overload with tons of data and information. And then the last one was getting processes and systems in place. And I say processes that I know we always talk about system, but just having processes in place. For me, systems are reproducible, scalable. Processes are just having something in place that can get you to the next level. So like those were the main five things that I focused on. Make sure we had a process for everything, focusing on those small numbers, and then making sure that we were scheduling appropriately. And then that plus adding, then we added, another doctor, more treatment rooms. We did an expansion, opened the capacity. We went from 6 ops to 11 ops. And then we added doctors, hygienists, assistants, front desk, kind of in that specific order. And then I got stuck at the 150, 200,000 a month. And I think that was probably the biggest one for me to jump over, because what happened there is that we started refining those processes and we started simplifying. And that was the biggest thing. We just talked about this on our call at lunch, but like once I started simplifying everything in my practice, things got easier for me, things got clearer, people's happiness got better, we started producing more. um, it was like a massive change, and things that we don't think are complicated at scale, and things get really complicated at $2.5 million a year, in my opinion.
I would agree. I would agree. I think that complications or complexity is the enemy of us executing, right? And that's a Tony Robbinsism. He said that, not me said that, right? But I do agree with that. The idea of creating systems isn't to overcomplicate your life, isn't to micromanage people. It's to create simplicity and everyone knowing what are the goals. Here's how we're playing this football game, right? Here's the plays, here's the score, here's how much time we have. And we're getting into a sports analogy because everyone understands goals, right? The goal line of playing sports. And you have team members there on the field, just like you have team members in your practice. And so I think just having a playbook, i.e., your systems, your operational manual, or it didn't have to be a manual. I want to say it's not a manual. You actually probably dug in and did some, videos, and you really kind of spent a lot of time training. And I think you mentioned earlier on the pod, Trey, that COVID in hindsight was one of the biggest blessings for that, because it let you sit around and architect a lot of this. Am I hitting that right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's going back to the working. You had the benefit of, instead of being like, well, we're on vacation for 3 months because of COVID, you said, I'm going to use this time to create and think about what I want. And I think that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and the two people I let go before we even hired, I hired them. They hadn't officially started. I had to lay them off, and then they had to take a leap of faith, which I'm not sure where they were going to go. But we had, 2 or 3 meetings, 1 hour meetings a week to talk about, you know, I mean, different types of training systems, and I couldn't I couldn't pay them, but I told them I'll take care of you when we start back, and I basically bonused them when we started back, and so yeah, and it allowed us to
So
extra.
what's your big plan for dentistry for your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it will always change. So depending on where you get to and how comfortable you are, and you know what that looks like when you get there, because you don't know what you don't
Correct.
know.
But
Uh,
based on present day data of what you feel right now,
mhm.
where is your trajectory? What is your plan?
So currently I'm under under contract for a piece of property to build a building for probably a 4 to 5 thousand square foot building, for location number two. Um, so I think long term it's going to be 5 to 7 practices that are somewhere in that 12 to, I'm not sure I'll do another 14 op practice, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. But, 2 doctor practices with 10 to 12 ops, kind of spaced out in a general vicinity. I'm on the outskirts of Charlotte, but in a similar demographic on the outskirts of Charlotte, definitely owning the real estate involved as well.
Good.
Um,
I like that plan. You've had a good mentor. Um,
Sound familiar?
no, no. The So do you feel does that scare you? Does that goal scare you a little bit? Because some people would say, like, if it doesn't scare you, then maybe it's not big enough. Or if it does scare you, right? Does it mean that you feel like you lack the skills to get you from there to there?
I know it's going to be challenging.
Sure.
I'm excited for
Good.
where I'm headed. I mean, it's like I'm looking forward to the new challenges that are ahead. I mean, the challenges of now growing other people to help your business grow, and to kind of take on a new venture. So I'm more excited than anything.
Good.
Of course I'm a little scared, but nothing like opening a practice during COVID. Everything else seemed so much doable after going through
Well,
what.
if you didn't have some fear, I think you'd be a sociopath, right? Like, I think fear is a good thing, and that it gets you fear. Humans kind of are motivated by two things. I think this is like Maslow says this. It's like fear of loss and avoidance of pain, right? And so, your fear is motivated by, hey, I've created something pretty awesome that's really not broken. I don't want to mess it up, right? So fear of I don't want to lose what I've created. So that's the fear that's going to drive you into the next phases of, well, I kind of want more because it's my calling. But that fear is going to help you it's going to help you look at things, meaning now you have the acumen to say, here's what got me here. I did X, Y, and Z, and you've been tracking it and documenting it, knowing that you're going to need that same skill set or that same thing to replicate in office number two, which is going to have its own unique little variances, but you've seen the movie before, which is why it's so important, that flagship thing. I wish I had spent more time with that flagship thing, because it will really help you when you have to weather the storm. And there might be a storm on that. You might have picked the wrong spot, so to speak, right? You may have amp up your marketing. You might have demographically picked the wrong area. Your bank may be calling for, I don't know, all these things, and you're going to
what
have different set of problems.
what scares me the most, there are, yes, there are definitely parts. I mean, I'm excited, but there's also parts that I'm really worried about. It's because what I'm scared about the most is, can I replicate on, maybe not quite as good as what we did, but can I replicate it again without myself?
Mm.
And that's what I'm trying to test. I want to test what I'm about to go do, because I'm gonna try. I'm gonna absolutely
Can
at all.
your business thrive in the absence of the creator is what you're trying to is what you're the hypothesis you're wanting to test now.
Right, not mine. Like, can I do open this other
I'm
practice
tracking. Yeah.
without me? And that's so. Like, I just had a conversation this morning. I don't have an operations manager anymore. That didn't work out. That was
Oh,
a bad idea. But
okay.
it was a good idea, but it was the wrong person. But I have a clinical manager, which for me is like, because it is has been a phenomenal hire for me. So she
Okay.
anyway, so I just had a conversation with her this morning, and I said, "Can you write down all the things that you do that if you were not here,
Mhm.
we would know what needs to be delegated to
You
who?"
got hit by a bus. What do you do?
Then she thought I was firing her. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
uh, but no, I said, you will always have a job. Well,
Look, man, I know we're making a joke about that, but this is a very important thing, and it's pervasive in dentistry. We spend time creating, training, teaching, and then this person jumps into this role, like you're saying, this person who's taken a lot off your plate, this clinical role, and they have all this beautiful IP. And where is that IP kept? In their head. And what happens when they leave? It goes with them.
yeah,
Typically, your head goes with you, right? So we lose all of this IP as opposed to like, hey, Trey, you're doing the right thing. Automate, systematize whatever system you're doing. I need you to replicate it, not because you're being fired, not because of anything, but like that is incumbent upon the success of the business for me to ask you to do this, right? So that someone else can step in your shoes if something catastrophic happened, or if you decide to leave this office, right?
yeah,
Not that you're not going to get fired, but if you decide to leave, I can't prevent that. So therefore, I need this for the health of the
yeah.
business and the people you're leaving. I need you to document this.
Yeah, and she's for her entire career she's been an assistant, and for her entire career she just has been the one that does it. She just does it. And so I mean, I've had very direct conversation with her that said, if I don't care if you go in the back, and I said, think of your job as if you can walk in and you do absolutely nothing all day long, and everything runs and operates. I was like, I will always find you something to do, even
Right.
if big problem.
Right.
But if you can walk in and you sit back on your phone and play on your phone and look on Facebook, which she does, I don't even know if she has Facebook, but if you play on your phone all day, I am perfectly okay with that as long as this thing runs squeaky clean. I'm like, I will always find you something to do, but think of it that way. Think of it as if you're making your job not necessary, and then when you do that, then you've done a good job.
So I want to pause here for a second because I want your feedback on this. There's probably a lot of dentists listening to this at all stages of the life cycle of where they are. They're thinking about me mentioning that one key person, the person that made their life so much better. And they're thinking, oh man, that's Cindy at my office. Man, if she left, shit, I would be up shit creek. I would be it would turn my world upside down. That is a business vulnerability. So if you are listening to that and that was you, and Trey, this probably would go to you as well, is that if you have that key person, right, that key man or key woman in your office, in your practice, and you're saying, God, how do I get them to document it? They're probably not going to create that system of documentation because you told them to create that system of documentation, right? Because they don't have enough time in their day. I think it has to be something fully intentional that you're like, look, let's make a list that a fifth grader can understand of all the actions that you do. We're going to calculate your day, your ideal day. We're going to break it down into 5-minute segments. And then I want you to write down the task. Okay, to create this is just the way my brain works. This is why you're smiling, Trey.
That's what I just said to her this morning.
Okay. And I say, I'm going to hire a videographer because it doesn't have to be edited early. I'm going to hire someone and I'm going to document these things down. At these 5-minute, this 100 tasks, these 100 things that you do in accumulation of your job. And because you're not going to be able to do it in your free time of just like creating me this system documentation. So imagine having a videographer that you said, hey, how much would it be for you to come in and film? They're like, oh, it's $400 for the day or $500 for the day. But now guess what? You have Cindy's complete IP in video form where you can put it in modules for somebody else. That is next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I refuse. This is the one thing that will keep me up at night. If my if I feel like my practice hinges on any one person,
Yeah.
myself, like
Well, it's a vulnerable, it's literally a vulnerability. I mean, and so this is the anxiety that's going to come from you not having this kind of peace with your business or practice, is knowing that at any moment, it's like spinning plates. At any moment, if that big plate comes down, we're in a shitstorm, right? That is a massive, you can't take a deep breath anymore, because it's like, right, your business is predicated on the actions of one.
yeah. No, and I feel even, I would be upset if the one person left, just because I think she'd be leaving a great opportunity for herself, because I see where what potential she has. But I don't. I feel like I could plug and play, either someone internally or externally into every position in our practice, and we have a lot of people here. I mean, we've got there's probably 17 or 18 full-time employees and 4 or 5 permanent part-time, which I consider two day a week, like part-time.
Yeah, the
So
success of your practice can't be predicated on like you hiring these unicorns and thoroughbreds, because as we know, they only come around our life, every so often. What you can do, though, is take those unicorns and document them and
yeah,
create a system that they are the unicorns. So we all have those people in our practice, because look, if business success, like think about, like, let's say like a high end chain like a Starbucks. I don't know if that's the only high end thing I could go with. If those people are, when you go into a Starbucks, I always marvel at them. Like, they're flying around, they're doing things, they get it pretty right all the time. It's a pretty good experience, right? And they're all over the place. The Starbucks are all over the place in locations, because they've created an operational standpoint where they can plug and play and grow and things like that. I think of Houston's too as kind of another chain. So back to your point of the people are the most important. I think you even started the pod with that, right? You started with using a team, phrase, the personnel, which we're changing to kind of just be the team you're deciding to play with.
right, right. No, it's so important. I mean, you know, we have people come in our office, never met us before in our life, and I tell them they need a tooth taken out or something, or a root canal, and people's patients' comments are, and they say this all the time, and it just fascinates me. And they say, oh, well, I trust you, like, yeah, if that's what you think, then that's what we're gonna. I'm like, hey, you don't, hey, trust me, you just met me for like 2 minutes. I've never worked on you in my life. And one day it kind of hit me. It's like, it's not about me. This is my team. This is from the
Well, I would push back on that, but yes, I like where you're tracking. But yes, it is the
like,
entire team. It was the experience that they were given from inception, of searching you online, to picking up the phone and calling, to greeting in the waiting room, to having a tour of the office, to all these things, right? Ultimately, by the time it got to you, you were the cherry on top that came in with confidence, clinical acumen, empathy, all the things that put the cherry on top. And they're like, I trust you, whatever you said. It wasn't that it wasn't that you were the inflection point, Trey. It was like you said, like you're saying, the team and the whole process prepared them for saying, whatever you think, doc.
yeah, and it still blows my mind that someone just says yes and open your mouth and let me put a needle in your mouth after they've just met me for no time. But you're right. I mean, that's 100% right. And I'm getting to where I try and say less and less and less in every single appointment, and
Hmm.
because I mean, my
This,
hygiene,
tell me why. Tell me why.
I'll screw it up. Like, my hygiene, and my team's better at it than I am. And
Mhm.
so my hygiene exams are, I walk in, I meet so and so, and I ask them what they do and chat a little bit about what they do or their hobbies, and I lay them back and I look in their mouth. I tell them you need a couple. If it's routine, if it's like you need something complicated,
Yep.
you need a couple fillings and a couple crowns. I don't show them X-rays. You need a couple fillings, get a couple crowns. We'll get you scheduled and get you a treatment plan and get you back as soon as you can. I'm done. That's it. and that works for me. And then, but my hygienist and the team around me can then go through and explain the stuff on the x-rays or the photographs, or what it's going to cost. And if I sit there and talk, the more I talk, the more I screw it up every
Yep.
time,
Yep.
every time. Or I talk that crown into an MODL filling, and I'm miserable just because I felt bad for Mrs. Jones. So anyways, so that's, but it's all because my team can train and back me up and say things like, "Oh, Dr. Miller's great," or, he does great work, or he worked on my mom, or, we've all talked about saying those little pieces of, information that make massive
I
growth.
love it, bud. This is next level stuff. I always say most of my anxiety when I was clinical didn't come from the practice of didn't come from the procedure, right? It came from the small talk that led up to that. So the more, and I would acquiesce just like you and be like, well, could do this, or you could do this, or we should do this, right? And that my team's looking at like, what are you doing? Like, we already talked about them doing this quadrant, and now you're saying like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Right.
Right.
And like, it's just so funny, but I got sweaty back around the small talk, and I don't know what I'm doing a good job, but I just wanted to get to the clinical aspect of it. It's so funny you say that, right? You
Now,
almost want to go in, have a good team that you trust, bobblehead, and say, yeah, I'm agreeing with what I'm finding, and look what we're doing. And yeah, let's get you scheduled, bobblehead, and then get the hell out of the operatory, because all you can do is confuse and
right.
therefore unenroll the treatment.
Absolutely. Or you'll convince yourself to do something
Yeah.
as good
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
even tell them what's going on. And so, yeah, it's, that piece of it. Now, now I'm to the point, like, my practice can't grow. We can't grow anymore off of me unless I dive into full arch dentistry, which I don't want to do because that's really hard to replicate, or to bring another provider in to do. And so I'm in the mode of like, all right, how do we train leaders or, managers to then disseminate and help train everyone else? Or how do I work with my doctors to get them to where their, production per hour is, $800, 800 plus an hour? Like, how do we do that?
So you're saying that, I'm gonna make like a car analogy. Let's say you redline a car at 5,500. You're saying that really you don't have kind of true growth if you're pegged at redline all the time, just doing all you can do. And look at these numbers and all the things. You have to kind of get back to where it's running at 3,000 RPMs, where you have some time, you're not overwhelmed, you're able to think outside your practice, because you become the bottleneck, right? Right. And you're saying like, look, we can't grow anymore with me, can't grow anymore with my personal production. So therefore, I have to account for some time to train, lead other practitioners in the practice, whether it's hygienist or dentist.
Yeah, and I've told you, I don't know, a week or so ago, like, I feel like I'm getting pulled out of the chair, and that my time is more valuable outside of the chair than in, just for those same reasons. I mean, I handed off a slam dunk. It was like a simple 7 to 10 case the other day, which would take no time to do, but I handed it off to another doctor, and because she's really great at it, and it's like, yes, I could have just told them what they needed, and 2 hours later, it's a $4,000 or $5,000 procedure. But it's like, all right, I've got to back off some of mine to be able to build them, because what good does it do if I'm running around hair on fire, 10 producing $10,000 to $15,000 a day, and they're not quite as busy. So, so I'm to that point of even stopping saying, like, I don't do certain things. Like, I don't enjoy cosmetic, like crown and bridge. I hate it. Like, I'm probably one of the only doctors out there that do. I can do it. I do a really good job at it. I can smile design. I can, like, just the
Yeah,
details.
but you don't like it. And you're self-aware enough to say like, hey, like, I don't want to do more shit I don't want to do, no matter the money.
Right. And
Right.
she
And
loves.
that's a beautiful place to be in. And also it then frees up, like you're saying, you triage and put a gift on your associate's plate that says, hey, this case is ready to go. I want you to do it. Like, you talk about goodwill. towards another human or another practitioner who in most cases in our industry, Trey, it's, how many times you heard this? I'm going to hire an associate to do the shit work.
Oh yeah. No.
How many times I mean, literally, if I hear that one more time, I'm not being dramatic. It's like, it makes me, it's so cringeworthy because I'm like, that is not a sustainable thing. And people are like, well, associates fail. They always fail. No kidding. Because the phrase we've been using is, I'm going to hire an associate to give them the shit work. Who wants to stay around and do shit work?
Right.
So I commend you on taking a quote unquote temporary haircut financially in order to propel the business forward. Hard, right? Because look, it's intoxicating, Trey. It's intoxicating to do the case, enroll the case. You can see it already done. It's intoxicating. Dentistry becomes intoxicating that way. You're like, I'm good. I enrolled it. Look at the case I'm going to do. Look at my outcome. Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Endorphins are at a high. So it's hard to give away like the drug that makes you feel good,
Yeah.
right? And give it to someone else and be like, all right, it's yours, I guess.
This morning we had my associate came in, and she had a number 15 that needed a root canal, and she didn't feel comfortable doing it, and the guy ends up, he needed a bridge. He wanted a bridge to go along with it, it was, I mean, she said, do you want to do the root canal? And I said, yeah, I'll do that for you. And I thought about it. I thought about it. I thought about it. I'm like, oh man, it'd be so easy just to prep both teeth and add $3,000. And I'm like, you know what? And I told whoever schedule, my front desk to schedule it with time where she can finish the bridge prep of it. Right. And oh, it was hard. She was so thankful. She was just like, because it was like painful for her to come to me to ask me to do the root canal, and she was willing to give up the entire procedure for the benefit of the patient. And I said, let's schedule it, and I'll get you back. I'll tell the patient, she's really great at it. Or
It's so true. And I love that you did that, because you're starting to think like, look, if shit hits the fan, the easiest person to get busy is me. Right. You're thinking this as Trey, right? You're saying, I'm the best enroller. I'm the owner. I put in the hard work. I can do it. Right. It starts insulating your business more to make other providers busy, as opposed to, well, I gave them away, right? I sacrificed, and it's not a sacrifice. It's just starting to insulate yourself a little bit more, even though it's tough in the beginning. Trust me, I've gone through all these permutations. Okay, Trey, I want to wrap, because I don't want to keep, I mean, I feel like we could go to all different sectors of the planet on dental ownership and such. I'm going to end with one last question.
Okay.
If you could give yourself advice as Trey 2.0, 2023, February 2023 Trey, to Trey pre-COVID, whether that you can give advice to the associate Trey or the Trey setting out on his journey, the scary journey, what advice would you give? It's a hard question. You can take a few seconds to really make it prophetic. For example, Trey, don't be scared. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. There's going to be things, but fear isn't something you should have to have. Or I don't know. I'm trying to fill in the silence here with some things. Or like, hey, Trey, you should learn this more, right? Like leadership. I should have done more leadership books, or I should have wrote my vision down better, or I should have learned more about marketing, or I should have put everything in video, or I should have, right? All these things. And maybe it's all those. But if there was one thing that you could give advice to that would have made the pain, quote unquote, I'm putting pain in air quotes, the pain of getting to where you are now less, what would it be?
Make time to look at your life and business. It's kind of what I said earlier. Make time to look at your life and business from an outside perspective, and whether that's an hour a day, just to self audit where you are and where you want to go, because it can, even thinking about coming on this podcast makes me go back and relive all the steps that help me get to where we are today. And sometimes it's nice just to do that, to kind of give yourself a little pat on the back, and to realize how much hard work you've put in and how much, and where you've grown to. Because when you're in it, like when I'm in it, you don't think about what you're doing. You're just grinding every single day and it's hard. And but if you can take a step back and just reflect, which is really hard to do, then and then to analyze what your North Star is, where you want to go, where you are, and where you came from. It's a very powerful tool.
I love that. I love that. I think it's great. It's giving yourself giving yourself some grace. B, I mean, that's kind of why we start our bulletproof pathway and mastermind and all things with the vision, because the vision can be your North Star. It can be the thing that quote unquote makes you bulletproof, because you're going to go through a little war and then be like, what am I doing? I can't, like you said, you called me. What am I doing? I can't do this anymore. And then you kind of re-audit that, re-look at that. And you're like, oh yeah, this is why. And it re-energizes you for the next battle.
What
Because
one more thing that's a little, I wrote this down too, and it's regular, that I wish I would have figured out a lot earlier is inefficient processes amplify exponentially with scale. And I wish I would have known that in the beginning, because you have all these great ideas. You listen to all these podcasts. You look at all these other people's systems and things they're doing, and you want to be like them or you want to do it like them, and then you may just create. And it may seem like the simplest thing in the world to you at the time, but as you scale, everything exponentially gets more complicated, and simple is easy. It's just
I love it. That's such a great place to end. I love that simple, like this simplicity. And this takes me back. Did you major in science by chance, like as a pre-dental student?
yes,
Okay. Do you remember the term entropy?
yes, but don't
Okay.
remember.
So entropy is remember, it's back in cellular and biology, and it's basically the default in nature is to get more disorganized, essentially,
Yes.
right? The cellular process so where I went with that when you were saying that is, and I completely agree, as someone who has a lot of scale in this ecosystem, the bigger the molecule, the more tendency there is for the more tendency for entropy to prevail.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to be all deep and woo woo, but like that you are completely right. When you're just small, you can suppress the entropy, the disorganization, because you are you are the nucleus of that molecule, right? When your molecule gets giant and multicellular, even, it's harder to do that without some simple, efficient processes that have been documented and organized through other things. So I love that now you're kind of working to suppress that entropy.
Yeah, that could be a whole another hour.
It sure could. It sure could. It sure
But
could.
yeah, so just everybody, just make sure you know what you want. You know where you're going. You've got a good group of people around you. Whoever that is, whether that's the podcast or masterminds or it's so important to have that support system around you. And Pete, I'll never be able to repay you for everything we've been through. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, man. It's been awesome. It's been awesome. I'm super proud of you. And and like you said, it takes just engaging and getting outside of your comfort zone, right? Whether that's a study club that you're in, right? And you're forced to kind of learn in your community, or you go to a summit with your team, potentially that could be a catalytic move. Or maybe it's even, next level where you're just sick and tired of the same results and you want to join a mastermind, which you want to have, you want exceptional results. You want to change the trajectory of your life. Or optimize your life. Maybe not even change the trajectory, just optimize for that of what you're living. And at the end, going back to what we've said, the end, the ultimate KPI, the ultimate thing we're all striving to do, whether we know it or not, is just create massive fulfillment with our lives, and using dentistry and the business of dentistry as the vehicle to do that. So anyway, that was awesome, buddy. That was awesome. I will wrap. And looking forward to seeing you. And I know I just saw you in Salt Lake, and looking forward to seeing you in person. Maybe this might not be until the summit. I don't know, since we've already done both of our mastermind retreats in Mexico and now Salt Lake. I'm wondering if the next time I'm going to see you are you going to come to Summit first off?
Yeah, I'm speaking.
Oh yeah, duh. Okay, yes. That was a perfect softball for saying, Trey, if you liked what you and Bonner are both doing you are the kind of the startup superstars, and you're doing kind of a presentation on that, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So if this resonated with you, or you want some help and you want more of Trey's secrets, we'll see you in Vegas at the Win. All right,
That's right.
guys. Have a good one.
Thank